Hi everyone. In previous video I showed you how to draft your basic bodice block and your basic skirt block. However, in today's video I will show you how to mesh both blocks to create a dress or a gown. But before we begin, I want to mention that there are two types of measurement you can use to achieve those patterns I just mentioned. So there are those people that measure from their high waist to their knee. Those category of people will fall under number 4. And there are also people who measure from their high waist to just underneath their knee. Those category of people will fall under number 5. Now let's begin. Before we continue, I just want to let you know that you can use this pattern to create basically any type of style you would want to. However, this boils down to your creativity. So the more creative you get, the more you can get out of this pattern. Now let's continue. The first thing I'm going to do is to place my center back or my body's pattern at the end or edge of my paper. Then I'm going to trace around it. After tracing around it, I'm going to use my tracing wheel to highlight the line. After that, I'm going to put the body's block aside. Then I'm going to label the left hand side as the center back, while the right hand side is the side seam or the side back. So I'm putting my skirt block underneath the bodies, but make sure that the waistline aligns even though the hem is pushing out of the paper. Make sure that the side and the center back waist aligns. So I'm just marking my upper hip with a point and my hip line with a point. Then I'm measuring the width of my upper hip and I'm real marking that area again. And I'm also measuring the width of my hip line level and I'm going to mark it on that area. After that, I'm going to connect using straight lines, horizontal lines, just to make the lines more visible. After connecting those lines, I'm going to use my hip curve ruler to create the shape of my hip. After that, I'm measuring from the hip line to the hem of my skirt at the center back and at the side seam, just so that I can get the actual length of the skirt replicated on the paper. And it's the same thing with the width of the skirt, so I have to remeasure that to get the exact width for the skirt, and I'm going to connect with a straight line. So after connecting with a straight line, the next thing I'm going to do is to remark all those areas I have not highlighted with the marker. Now I'm going to label my center back gown and my side back or side seam gown. The next thing is to measure the length of the dart. For the back dart, the length is usually 3 cm below the upper hip line. So I'll just draw a straight line and not reshape the dart just yet. Now I'm going to move my paper closer to me so that I can have more room to draft the front pattern. So the first thing you're going to do is to put your basic bodies for the front at the edge or end of your paper. Then you're going to trace around it just like the way we did with the back bodies. After tracing around it, I use my tracing wheel to highlight the lines so that I can transfer those lines onto my paper. Once I was done, I placed my skirt pattern just underneath my traced out bodies. So you want to make sure that when you are placing your skirt pattern, the center front waist must align with the center front of the bodies. Even though the skirt is pushing into the bodies, it does not matter. What is important is that the skirt aligns at the side with the bodies and the center of the skirt aligns with the center of the bodies, and that your paper or your pattern does not push out. Your skirt pattern should not push out of your paper, unlike the back that was pushing out. So I'm using my marker to just recreate all the areas I have traced out. Now I'm going to get my pattern and measure from my hip line to the hem of my skirt so that I can get the exact length of the actual skirt replicated on this new paper. Then I'm going to connect with a ruler. Now I am just labeling my pattern. So recall that we traced out that area, but we are not going to recreate the dart for the waist area. We're only going to recreate the dart for the shoulder. So the waist area, you're just going to draw a straight line, and the length of the front dart stops 2 cm above the upper hip line. So I'm just marking it. This is what the dress block looks like before I will go ahead to reshape my dart at the waist. Right now, I'm marking 1.5 cm at the center back waist, but you can mark a maximum of 2 cm. This will help to eliminate any form of bulge at the zipper area. From the 1.5 cm mark, I'm going to connect to my armhole line, and I'm also going to connect to my upper hip line. Then I'm going to just scratch out those areas because I no longer need it. After that, I'm going to mark 1 cm at the neck area. I initially forgot to draw out my back cross armhole, so I'm just doing that now, and I'm going to connect from the 1 cm to the back cross armhole. Then I'm going to scratch it out too because I do not need that area. So because we've taken out 1.5 cm at the waist, we cannot just go ahead to recreate the actual shape of that we have here. So these are actual dart leg. So after measuring here from this 1.5 cm mark we have to the side seam waist, what I have is 26.5. We're going to say paper waist 26.5. Now the actual waist I got from the person's body when I measured the person, that's the waist circumference, is 103. So I'm going to say 103 divided by 4, that will be 25.7. So actual waist 25.75. So now I will say 26.5 minus 25.75. What I have is 0.75. Now I'm going to divide that into 2. So 0.75 divided by 2, that will be 0.3. So I'm going to mark 0.3 to the left and 0.3 to the right. So this is 0.3 to the left and this is 0.3 to the right. So this is my new dart leg. Now I'll connect the dart leg to the armhole line and to the 3 cm mark below the upper hip line. So it's the same thing with the front. You just have to check if you have the actual waist for the front. So for the back we marked out 1.5 cm, but for the front we did not mark out anything, but we just want to reconfirm if everything is as it should be. So now I am going to measure the paper waist beginning from the center front to the side front. What I have here is 28. I'm going to write paper waist 28, while the actual waist on the person when I measured her was 103. I'll divide it by 4, that will be 25.75. So So I'll say 28 minus 25.75. That will be 2.25. Now you're going to divide 2.25 by 2 to get 1.1. You mark 1.1 to the left and 1.1 to the right. Then you connect your new dart leg. This is what the basic dress pattern or block should look like when you are done. However, if you want a peg dress, then you have to do some readjustment, and we'll get to that in just a minute. Remember, in the beginning of the video, I mentioned there are different ways of taking measurement. So if you measured from your high waist to your knee, it means you fall under category of number 4. And what you have to do is measure from your hip line to your knee line and get the middle. Once you get the middle point, draw a line across it, both for your back pattern and your front pattern. This new line, you will label it as your midline or middle line. Then wait for the people that fall under category of number 5 to get to this stage so that we can do it simultaneously. Now, for those of us that measured from our high waist to just below our knee, before we continue to the next step, we need to measure 7.5 cm above our knee line. So from your pattern, just mark 7.5 cm upward of it, and you mark it at the front pattern and at the back pattern. Then you draw a line across it. The next thing we'll do is to measure from our hip line to the 7.5 cm mark. Divide whatever we get by 2. Then we're going to draw a line at that point. So we're just trying to get our own middle line, just like the way the people in category number 4 got their middle line. So this is our middle line now for the people in category number 5. Now, both categories of number 4 and number 5 can continue to the next stage simultaneously. At the line where we have 7.5 cm, we're going to mark 2.5 cm inward of our pattern. Then we're also going to mark it at the side seam, 2.5 cm. Then we're going to mark it at the side front, only at the side front, not at the center front. We'll mark 2.5 cm. Now we'll divide 2.5 cm by 2. So 2.5 cm divided by 2 will give us 1.2. Now we'll mark 1.2 at the middle line. Then we'll also mark it at the side back, 1.2. And we'll also mark 1.2 at the side front. Please do not mark it at the center front. Mark it only at the side front. Now we're going to connect all these points together using our varying curve. So from the 1.2 mark, we'll connect from the midline to the hip line, flip the ruler over and connect from the 1.2 mark to the 2.5 cm and extend the line downwards. We'll repeat the same process for the side back. Connect from the 1.2 to the hip line, flip the ruler and connect from 1.2 to the 2.5 and extend the line downwards. So I'm just scrapping those areas out because I no longer need it since I'm trying to create a peg dress or a gown. Now repeat the same thing for the side front. From the 1.2 to the hip line, flip the ruler, connect to the 2.25 or 2.5 cm and extend the line, then scrap those areas out. We are all done with drafting the basic dress block. But if you would like to eliminate your back shoulder dart, at the shoulder neck point, you have to place your ruler. My ruler has centimeters and inches, so I'm using the centimeters part by placing the ruler at the shoulder neck point and drawing a straight line just across. The width of the shoulder I'm working with is 15 cm because that's what I measured from the person's body. So I have to mark exactly 15 cm and connect from that 15 cm mark to my back cross armhole. So it means I've taken out or eliminated my dart. So I will have to cut along this new line that I just created. Now I am just blending in the waistline because you don't want any sharp edges. So you can decide that you want a one-piece gown and leave it as it is, or you can decide you want a two-piece gown or a dress and decide to separate the waistline from the skirt part so that you can have two-piece each. I know this video is detailed, but it will help you understand how I manipulate my patterns in future videos. I hope you learned a thing or two. Take care and have a great day.